Hello and welcome. The Joker movie has been oddly controversial, and not controversial because of really anything in the movie. I mean, there's scenes of extreme violence and grotesque violence even, but no one really cares about the grotesque violence, or else the media would have thrown up the same stink for like Blade back in the day, or any horror movie that's out there, like The Purge. But we don't see that same level of paranoia that we've seen with the Joker, to the point that on opening night in New York City, they diverted police away from policing the streets where they need to be to patting down people going into the movie theater because they are worried they'd have another Colorado Joker shooting on their hands. Which, just lest you have forgotten here, the guy who did the Colorado shooting in the Joker movie theater, the media made a big deal. Oh, he was inspired by Joker. He was dressed up like Joker. Both those things are 100% false. There was a psychiatrist who sat down with the shooter at the Aurora shooting, and they specifically asked him about his hair color. And it turned out the only reason he dyed it at all was because his friend dyed his red, so he dyed his blue. And not green like the Joker. It was just a random hair color choice he chose. So he wasn't inspired by the Joker. He wasn't dressed up like the Joker, but we pushed this narrative, and now we have another Joker movie, and the media has just lost their minds that people are going to be shooting up everyone in the streets. And honestly, I think that is really showing off their hand, that they really tipped their own mindset, because having watched the Joker movie, I was in no way inspired to go out and commit acts of violences. I was in no way inspired to go out and commit acts of violence. And I think no rational person would be. However, the main villain of the Joker is rich white people. I mean, they are the main villains or the main antagonists, I should say, against Arthur Fleck. And this resounds and resonates with the mainstream media so much because they also view rich white people as the villains of America. And, honestly, it's funny how they don't view people like Bernie Sanders, who is filthy rich, or Nancy Pelosi, who's filthy rich, or the Soros brothers, who are filthy rich, as evil rich people. But they only view a certain side of the political spectrum as evil rich people. I think that's very telling. But more importantly, when it comes to the Joker, I think what they've shown is that they are so sympathetic toward the Joker's ideal system that you're going to get what you deserve, you rich people. That they have panicked, that they think everyone thinks like this, and they think everyone who thinks like this, that rich white people are just the sum totality of everything that's wrong in America, are going to be inspired by this movie and go and commit the act of violence. And I think that now that none of that's happened, they're kind of disappointed. They wanted to see everyone just losing their minds over this movie. They wanted to see people getting inspired by this movie because they share the Joker's mindset that rich people need to get what they deserve. And when no one did this, they're disappointed. So yesterday, a journalist released an article in Time, which is supposed to be a kind of news magazine, but I don't remember the last time Time actually did a unbiased piece of news work. It's been propaganda for just as long as I can remember. But they've pivoted because we're not getting the violent white people that they're kind of hoping we get. Instead, we're pivoting, and let me bring this article up because this was released yesterday, and it was so dumb that I had to stop and talk about this with y'all. So this is done by a young black lady named Bandera July. And I apologize if I messed up your name there. Hooked on Phonics did not work for me, so I do my best. But anyway, this piece, as the article says, it absolutely contains spoilers for the Joker. So I apologize if you haven't seen the Joker yet. I recommend you just stop. I mean, honestly, you could know every twist that comes in the movie, and it would still be a really great movie. And I obviously have loved this movie. And just because I've liked it isn't the sum totality of why I'm defending it right now. This could have been a crap movie, and this article would still have elicited a response from me, because this is just the dumbest thing I've read in a while. So she starts off with this first paragraph here about the slogan of "Listen to Black Women" emerging as a familiar refrain after the 2016 election because Orange Man's bad. And she makes a couple of kind of neither here nor there comments that 94% of Black women didn't vote for him, to congressional leaders like Maxine Walters is pushing for the impeachment. And let me just say here, guys, this whole impeach Trump thing, it was ridiculous when Republicans were doing it against Obama, and it's ridiculous now that Democrats are doing it against Trump. It makes y'all look like sore petty losers, and it made Republicans look like sore petty losers when they lost and Obama was in office. You know what? You don't always get your guy in office. I didn't like Trump or Hillary, so I was guaranteed not to have my guy in office, but you lost. I'm sorry if you didn't like Trump, but you lost the election, and this witch hunt inquiry that he's been facing since day one, to the made-up Russian collusion with the Steele dossier report that Hillary basically paid for, to this latest thing, it's embarrassing, and please, guys, just stop. But anyway, she makes this really ridiculous kind of, oh, hey, here's my political leanings, and oh, if only people would listen to Black women, we wouldn't have the Orange Man in the office. But then she finally does get down to the meat of her article, talking about how, despite the fact that the Joker has been breaking box office records, even as it generated controversy, which, again, she's trying to act as if like, well, this is such a controversial movie, but the only people who thought it was controversial are the mainstream media. So writing an article and then linking to your own article that you wrote, which she didn't in this specific case, she links to another Time article. That's not really a good well of proof that this is a controversy. Linking to your own newspaper, that's not credible. I'm sorry, it's just generating clicks. But anyway, with some critics calling it dangerous and law enforcement officials addressing security concerns, which, again, they should have not had to address those concerns like we did down in Texas because we're more rational people. They should have been on the streets patrolling for actual crimes. But nope, because the mainstream media threw such a hissy fit over this movie, we had to take police off and waste their time for the evening of the opening night at the Joker. So amid these debates, one element that's been less frequently discussed is this movie's inclusive casting choices and its supporting roles. So, now that they've lost this is a movie that's going to inspire violence argument, we're seeing the narrative shift. So now, this is a bad movie because it wasn't inclusive enough. There weren't enough diverse characters. And, as soon as I got here, so I was interested where this Miss July was going with. I'm sorry, I completely threw my mind off there because saying her name like that made me think of a calendar where she's Mrs. July, and it sounded derogatory, and that's not my intent. So I need to stop and say that as her name. I'm not trying to be insulting with that. But anyway, I wanted to see where Miss July was going with her article. But once I got to this point, where it's talking about the inclusiveness, I realized that what they are doing now is they're pivoting from violence and going to this isn't diverse enough. They're going to identity politics on the movie. So they don't actually care what the movie's saying. They don't care what the movie's about. It didn't hit enough of their identity checkmark boxes. So she's going to talk about the 5 Black people that appear in this movie. And we'll talk about this too, but let me just say, if your focus is on how much screen time a specific race got, then you're going to find that there was no race included enough. Because aside from Arthur Fleck, aside from the Joker, almost no one got any screen time. And this is one of the great things about this movie. This is Joaquin Phoenix's movie. He has blown it out of the park for the way he portrayed the Joker, because he carried the movie. Like when people say, oh, this movie's only good because of Joaquin Phoenix, you should respond with, duh, are you an idiot? Of course he carried it. He's on the screen for almost 100% of the movie. There is barely a scene in this movie where he is not front and center, and everyone else just kind of drifts in and out of it. So I'm sorry, if you're looking for a movie where everyone gets the exact same screen time, first of all, good luck. I've yet to see a movie where every race, or even the majority of races in the movie, get 100% equal screen time. And not even The Last Jedi had 100% equal screen time amidst all its diverse cast. But if that's what you're looking for, I'm not even sure why you're watching movies. If you're looking for just identity politics in a movie, you're never going to be satisfied. So anyway, she's going to talk about these 5 black people who are in the movie. And it's interesting the way she goes with it. So I'm going to skip ahead in the article because a lot of this is just, writing down words so you have a high word count, to be honest. She talks about the fact that black characters, they're on the screen, but they never really get enough time. They're always kind of in the background. And again, everyone's in the background to Joaquin Phoenix, to Arthur Fleck. Everyone is in the background to him. And she's trying to make a big deal as if black women or the black people in general are even more so in the background, but they're not. So she talks about the fact that black characters, and especially black women, are relied upon to call out Fleck's insanity, but their perspectives are repeatedly undermined. And she makes a quick aside that, Thomas Wayne rebukes Fleck too, but as well-established characters in the DC Extended Universe who both happen to be white men, they are more palatable to a core audience which predominantly looks like them. This is a really, really weird sentence, because what she's trying to talk about here is that a few people do try to stop Arthur Fleck in his descent toward insanity. And she tries to make the case that black women are the ones who are the ones most working to stop this. And then she makes this really weird comment that, well, yeah, sure, a couple white guys too, but it's more acceptable because I'm a white man, and when I see another white man rebuking another white man, it makes me happy, and it makes me uncomfortable when a black woman does it. And I'm sorry if I'm being extra condescending in this video, but this is such a dumb argument that I can't help but be a little condescending to this individual. And I don't care about their race. I don't care about their gender. I care about what she's saying. Miss July is just being an absolute... There's no nice way to say this. She's being an idiot when she says this stuff. There's been no one talking about how offended they were that a black woman was trying to help Arthur Fleck. Just literally no one. I haven't seen that anywhere. And she's trying to make this connection that we were okay with Thomas Wayne doing it, but not okay with the black woman doing it. And it's insulting that she even goes here. It's just trying to make this up out of thin air. If she had actually watched this movie, and there's just a couple lines in here like this one, where I go, did you actually watch this movie? Or did you see some trailers and you're making some assumptions? Because she tries to act as if Thomas Wayne got more character development in his rebuke than the social worker did, or the psychiatrist at the end. And that's just not the case. Because Thomas Wayne, he actually gets all of one scene in the movie where he's actually important. He appears on a TV screen where he's making his case for being the upcoming mayor of Gotham. He makes a derogatory remark toward Arthur Fleck, who he doesn't know as Arthur Fleck at the time, but he's referring to him, to the Joker. And that's it. That's all the screen time Thomas Wayne gets. And he's actually portrayed as the villain. He's not some sympathetic character for us to get behind and be like, oh, hey, here's a white guy, I like him. He is portrayed as part of those who are the antagonists against Arthur Fleck. He's part of the problem. And the fact that she's trying to pretend as if he was treated in more reverent manner than any of the black women, it's just stupid. And it's not even paying attention to the way the movie went. So anyway, we're going to talk about these women. First of all, the first black woman you see in the movie is the social worker. And we get to see Fleck on a casework visit. She asks about his journal, which it's supposed to be him keeping a record of his thoughts and his feelings, but he uses it as a journal for writing down joke ideas. And, you know, in her paragraph here, she tries to make it think that, or she tries to make it sound as if the social worker is really trying hard. And, oh, she wants to be helping Arthur Fleck. And she even makes a comment that, oh yeah, even though Fleck tells us in the scene that she's a bad counselor who never listens to him, what we actually see is a woman who's trying to help him cope and catch up to the reality of the hardship is not personal. And this is so disingenuous. Go watch the movie. Comment below if you agree with Miss July here, or if you agree with me. But she is being extremely disingenuous with this comment. In the scene and in all the interactions with the social worker, she just doesn't care at all. And it's not because she's black. It's not because she's a woman. It's because her character is there to show that Arthur had a chance to be redeemed. He had a chance to get the help he needed. But the problem was the system, which she was a part of, wasn't equipped with people who cared about actually helping, and it wasn't equipped with the financial money it needed. And those problems weren't the black woman problems. The problem was the antagonist in the movie, that those who are in power, the rich white people, weren't giving it the funding it needed to hire the people it needed, to give the prescriptions it needed, to have everything it needed. And the whole point of it was she wasn't listening. Arthur does say, you never listen. I literally just said, all I think about, the only thoughts I have all the time are hurting myself. All I have are negative thoughts, and you just don't care. And her response is not to address what he just said, but to say this line that Miss July quotes here, they don't give any cares about people like you. They don't give any cares about people like me. And the point of it is not like she's actually caring about Arthur. The point of it is she's shifting the attention away from what Arthur just said, that all I think about all day long is hurting myself. All I have is negative thoughts. She shifts it from that statement onto her. Oh, I'd love to help you, but I can't because no one cares about you and no one cares about me. And so the fact that she's trying to twist this into being, oh, she really wanted to help, it's disingenuous. And it makes me wonder if she actually saw the movie or if she saw bits and pieces as she was tweeting on her phone or something. Then we see her talking about the second black woman in the movie, which was a woman on the bus. And in the interaction, the scene, you see her child turns around and you can't see it in this screenshot below. I thought maybe there'd be a picture of the kid here, but the child turns around and is just staring at Arthur, and the mom doesn't care. The mom's totally checked out. And then Arthur starts doing some funny faces, stuff like that to entertain the kid, and the mom lashes out at Arthur Fleck. Now, Miss July tries to make this paragraph sound as if this poor black mom, she's on the bus and Fleck is totally out of line and she's just an angel and Fleck is a glaring red flag. And this is stupid. In the context of the scene that this happens in, her race doesn't matter. What matters is the only point of the scene is for it to set up that Arthur has an uncontrollable laughter. That whenever he is embarrassed, whenever he is in a negative situation, he's stressed, he begins laughing uncontrollably. And so he has to pull out a card and he hands it to the lady and he's trying to stop laughing. You can see he's literally trying to choke himself just about at times, trying to keep this back and crying. And that's the only purpose of the scene. And maybe the mom in real life would have been like, why is this guy interacting with my kid? Why is he talking? This is weird. But it doesn't matter. The mom wasn't being virtuous. The mom wasn't being evil. But trying to make it sound as if this was just a 100% innocent interaction, innocuous, it's completely ignoring the context of the movie. And honestly, I saw this scene and I thought the mom was being rude. She just was. I mean, Arthur's doing nothing wrong. The kid was actually instigating the interaction. And then the mom was the one getting pissed off. On Reddit, there's an entire subsection called entitled parents dedicated to moms like this who, they do things like, oh, well, I see you're playing with the Game Boy. My son would like to, or I guess there's Switches now. I see you're playing with a Switch. My son would like to play with your Switch. And then they make a big stink out of the fact that you won't give her son that you don't know the Nintendo Switch. And it's like, well, no, this is my Switch or this is my PlayStation Portable, if those are still a thing. And so go read those and you can decide for yourself if this mom is being more like an entitled mom or if she's just a completely innocent bystander. But again, context of the scene is just, it's only there so that we can see Arthur being in an uncomfortable situation, triggering his laughter so that we get a cue that he has neurological problems. The third interaction we see is that of Sophie Dumond, or again, I hope that's how you say it right, but Sophie. And this is kind of a spoiler territory situation, so hopefully up till now, everything that I've spoiled has been really light, who cares? This is a kind of important one. So I'm going to put a little timestamp code on when you can skip past this discussion if you don't want this part of the movie spoiled for you. Otherwise, let's talk about Sophie. She's trying to make it sound like Sophie was this really important character and trying to stop Arthur's descent toward insanity, when in fact she wasn't. And she also tries to make a big deal about the fate of Sophie's, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's talk about Sophie. In The Joker, Arthur Fleck gets a girlfriend, starts dating this young black woman. She has a child whose name is Sophie. And it starts off with, they have an interaction in the elevator, and Arthur doesn't know how to interact with her. And her daughter is just, going off. And so the mom's like, oh, yeah, this is so hard. And he just sits there. He doesn't know how to respond. He's totally panicking. And they finally get off the elevator, and he's like, hey. And she's like, okay, yeah, way to respond, half an hour too late. And then the next day he follows her to her work. And she comes, knocks on his door after work. It's like, hey, I saw you following me, but I'm okay with that. I think you're a neat guy. So, hey, they start dating. And at the end, when Fleck has learned and I'm not going to spoil this part, I will stop here. Fleck has learned something that is just shatters his whole identity about himself. And he goes over to his girlfriend's apartment, just sits down, and he's in misery. And we see Sophie come out, and she freaks out. She can't believe he's here. She's like, what are you doing in my apartment? You don't belong here. You live down the street. Please don't hurt me. And then we realize, and this is a spoiler here, it's the last chance, we realize Arthur made the whole thing up. He hallucinated everything. Every interaction with Sophie was completely made up in his mind. And then he leaves. And she tries to make it sound like, what happened to Sophie? Did she die? Well, we can't show it because she's a black woman. We can't show the fate of this poor black woman. That'd be wrong. And the movie's being wrong not letting us see the fate of this poor black woman. But we do get to see the fate. Sophie's fine. If there's anyone out there who's confused by this interaction, and just a few minutes later in the movie, we see two of his old co-workers show up. There was the guy who gave him the gun, and there was the manager, who happens to be a dwarf or a midget. And he brutally murders the guy who gave him the gun, because the guy who gave him the gun also sold him down the river, making up lies about Arthur, and he was kind of the instigator for actually getting him fired in the end. And so he just brutally murders that guy. And then he looks at the midget, and there's a scene, and it's a scene that gets everyone this really kind of embarrassed and laughing laughter. But once they came inside, Arthur, he does the latch on top of the door. And so he tells the midget that he can leave. And so the guy runs for the door, and he can't reach the latch. And so there's this moment, and everyone in the theater laughed at this. And there was this laugh like, oh my goodness, I laughed at something that I really shouldn't be laughing at moment. And then the guy turns around, and he asks Arthur for help to unlatch it. So Arthur unlatches it, and he opens the door, and then he shuts it again. And he says, you were the only person at work who treated me well, who treated me like a person. And he gives him a kiss on the forehead and lets him leave. And based on this one scene, you can know that Arthur didn't hurt Sophie or her child at all. Arthur, at this point in the movie, is not about random violence. He's not about killing people for the fun of it. He is taking only revenge against people who, in his mind, had wronged him. The reason we don't see if Sophie lives or die, in the sense of like, okay, I'm going to leave you now and I'm not going to hurt you, is because the movie tries to make it clear that he doesn't hurt Sophie at all. Sophie's done nothing wrong. He has no reason to go after her, and he leaves her apartment in peace. The fact that Miss July tries to make this sound as if it was nefarious that we don't get to know her fate, it's not just disingenuous, it's straight up lying. She is trying to make this movie sound as racist as it possibly can, and it's wrong. She's trying to play identity politics and make up stuff that isn't there, and all she's showing is that she doesn't know anything about movies, and she doesn't know anything about this movie especially. Instead, she says, well, the audience is left to imagine the violent send-off he might give these characters. Talking also about the fourth black female we see, and the fifth black person at all. At the very end of the movie, we see him with another black female psychiatrist, and I really want to see this movie again and see if this lady at the end of the movie is the same social worker at the beginning of the movie. I don't think she is. She's on screen briefly, and it wasn't until after the movie where I went, well, was that the same person? I didn't pay attention. So I don't know. So I am interested in doing that. I'm sure I could look it up on IMDb and find out in an instant, but I'd like to find out these things more organically. I like to actually look. But anyway, she says we're left to imagine the violent send-off of these two people, because after he is talking with the psychiatrist at the end of the movie, he leaves and we see bloody footprints. No, we're not left to imagine her violent send-off. The movie is telling us completely and clearly that he brutally killed the lady at the end, the psychiatrist in Arkham Asylum, at the very end of the movie. And I'm assuming it's Arkham Asylum, but it makes no sense for it not to be. But he brutally killed her, and he walks off with his footsteps leaving bloody footprints. There's no question about it. And there's no question that he didn't kill Sophie, because she's not part of the problem. He killed the psychiatrist because in his mind, she's part of the system out to keep people like him down. And it's really black and day difference, day and night difference. And the fact that she's trying to make this sound nefarious, it's dumb. But she goes on. She tries to make the difference about his perceived enemies, specifically the white people. And she talks about Murray Franklin, who, that's his name, Murray. The Murray Show, who I was calling Ed Sullivan in my Joker review video. So Murray Franklin, played by Robert De Niro, and each of these murders has an extended build-up that unfolds in painstaking detail. And she says that the reason the difference is because it would bring criticism if the film were to show Joker viciously murdering two black women on camera. And I 100% disagree. That's not why these two deaths weren't advertised, and they weren't just built up the same way. One of the great things this movie does is it makes you feel exactly what it wants you to be feeling. There's scenes where you're just on the edge of your seat in anticipation of not him doing something bad per se. Like there's one scene where he's dancing around with a gun and looking at it, and you're just on the edge of your seat like, this is going to go wrong. How is it going to go wrong? And the movie just does such a good job, because in these moments, it will cut the music and you won't even know. You're just, it's stringing you along, and then all of a sudden the music stops, and the tension is just so high that you keep sitting there waiting for the thing to happen. And so the reason these two black women weren't murdered is murdered on screen, is first of all because Sophie wasn't murdered. But second of all, because there was no point in showing the murder of the psychiatrist at the end of the movie. It was actually more poignant for you to see the after effects and the glib nature Joker has toward doing these things now than it was to show you that first brutal murder he did against his former coworker, and then the murder against Robert De Niro, Murray, because he was going to shoot himself. He was going to kill himself. And instead, he killed Murray Franklin on screen, on live TV. And so that's why those got such intention, because those were the moments that formed Joker. And we don't need to see him killing each and every person from this moment on. And not getting to see the psychiatrist get murdered at the end of it, it just showed more into the Joker than we possibly could have gotten out of some other brutal scene being played out on screen. And that's what this movie is all about. This movie is all about making you feel exactly the way they want you to make it feel. From the very first trailer they released, this movie has been a masterpiece in using blocking, and using the coloring of this movie, and using music, and using tone and tension to get you to feel exactly what they want you to feel. You can hate this movie, which I can see there's going to be a lot of people, you're going to watch and go, not my movie. And that's fine. This is a slow burn kind of movie in which 100% of the screen time just about is spent toward Arthur Fleck. And so there's not some nefarious purpose in which white people are given more screen time than black people. It's that Arthur Fleck, Joaquin Phoenix, gets all the screen time of this movie, and everyone else gets just enough to showcase Arthur Fleck. And that's just really one of the beauties of this movie, beautiful things of this movie. I think one of the most telling things, just to wrap this up, I think one of the most telling things about this article is, I've mentioned this before, and I'm not going to say what the sentence is, I'm not going to say what the twist is, but there is a twist in this movie. And if you're paying attention, you'll catch it, because it comes, it goes. If you got it, you'll be like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. This is definitely the Joker. And if you miss it, you're going to walk out of the movie going, meh. This was a movie about some guy who had Joker-like tendencies, and the DC universe is just doing this movie to make a quick buck after their embarrassing sales of other things. But she actually quotes the twist in the movie, in her article. She mentions the twist full out in her article. And I don't think I have it on the screen right now. I'm not going to show you it. But if you read this article, and it's on Time, again, the lady's name was, I'm going to look it up here real quick, because I'm going to mispronounce her first name. It is Bandera July. She quotes it. If you read this article, she quotes the twist in the movie, and she is such a complete ignorant on comic book stuff that she misses it completely. And she's like, oh, this was such a thing where this woman was reaching out to him and he just brushes her off, and oh, if only this black woman had been successful. And I'm sitting there going, you missed it. That was the whole point of this movie. This one line that reframed everything. And look, I freely admit, from the first video I've ever done, I admit that I am closer to being a comic book normie than I am to being a comic book enthusiast. But even I know enough about the comic book scene to have caught this and just fell in love with the movie from this moment. So look, I'm going to stop there. I am thoroughly disgusted with this, that they think because they can't get the violence angle to stick, they're going to pivot to identity politics. And, you know, I can't stand this kind of racism. I cannot stand the fact that in modern America, we are actively trying to progress backwards. We're trying to make every white guy out to be a KKK member. We're trying to make everyone out to be a lynch mob, to the point that people who are 100% innocent, we can completely fabricate lies about them, and we will get everyone to crucify this guy, to hang him up high because he doesn't agree with your particular politics. And I'm not just talking about in the political arena for people like Trump. Like I said, I didn't vote for the guy. I didn't like either one of them. In fact, most of America didn't like either one of them because more people didn't vote than did vote for either one of them. So just the whole, in life in general, people don't like a guy at work, so they spread lies about him on Twitter, and all of a sudden he's getting fired, and then they follow him to the next job and get him fired. Like a while back ago, there's a news story about the mattress girl who made a complete lie about this guy violating her, ruined the guy's life, and then finally, years later, was like, oh yeah, I made up this story. It made for a good art project. And has received zero ramifications for destroying this guy's life, has zero remorse. And to take that sort of mentality and do it with race, I'm so sad to see us backsliding when it comes to race relations. We were doing so well, and it's not because of the current person in the White House. And it certainly wasn't because of the last person in the White House either, as some Republicans would like to claim. Just we as a nation are turning against each other to an insane degree, and I can't stand this kind of racism. This article is just an epitome of the racist mindset, to take something that's not racist and to turn it into nothing but racism. I can't stand it, and it obviously makes me very upset, as you can clearly see from this video. So I'm going to stop here. Guys, if you like this kind of comic book review stuff, first of all, let me know down in the comments below. You agree with me? You disagree with me? Go read this article. I will link it in my description of this video. Read the article for yourself. You decide if I am overstating things, or if you completely agree with me. I'd love to hear your opinion on this. But if you like this sort of content, I don't do it that often. But I got 2 channels for you who do. First of all, one of them is called the Young Rippa. I think his name is Young Rippa 59. I'll put a link for him in the video. I found him recently. He does a great job breaking down comic book stuff, as well as doing some political stuff. He's a young black man. Libertarian is what he's let himself known to be in his own videos, so that's the only reason I mention it. But he does great comic book reviews. And the second guy I recommend is you go check out Gary Beekler over at Nerdrotic. He does Star Trek stuff. He does comic book stuff. He used to own a comic book shop. So if you like this sort of comic book news stuff, I highly recommend you go check out these 2 guys. I'm going to stop. I hope you enjoy these videos because I love making them. And until the next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up your countenance and give you peace. Amen.